need to invest in take recording for your classes.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at, I'm gonna be uploading these, like in parts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm working on an online presence where there's videos and I share, different parts of the classes, and then I'll have things that are specific for those who want to pay for like personal classes or like little private things I may be doing, especially going over different subjects, or things specifically and throwing it out there to like followers, like what is it that y'all want to talk about this week? What is it that y'all want to talk about this month? What's a topic that we can cover, and then just kind of going through that, and that'll be something private for those that are, a part of like this Patreon site that I'm looking at getting on, where it allows that there will be the videos for the public, something like this I may share, and then there will be the private stuff for those who are, just making like donations here or there, and with them, there can be like a direct interaction, so feel free to think about what some of those things would be, So, yeah, first of all, thank y'all for coming through to this, to the first class. Yeah, this course, this Intro to Hoodoo.
Thank you for teaching it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, Intro to Hoodoo and working with the ancestors. Fundamental basis, of this system of African American folk magic. So one of the first things that I like to start off with, and this is besides like an invocation, which I did before we even got started, so that's already been handled. But even the word hoodoo, who's familiar with the origins of the word hoodoo? Where does it come from? Most people are, in some type of debate as to where the word hoodoo even comes from, what's its real meaning. And it has so many uses in the system itself. You can say someone's been hoodooed, or this is a hoodoo person, or hoodooing, and so on and so forth. So even the word hoodoo, is tricky in its own nature, And so from what I've been able to find, the word hoodoo itself has two kind of main sources that it may come from. One is from the Hausa, from North Nigeria, the Hausa tribe. And so for them, the word hoodoo comes from the word juju, which means evil spirit or magic, or a fetish or evil spirit. So that's one particular source, the word juju. Now, besides that, I've also found that there's the word voodoo, which means an entity or an intermediary between God and men. Yes?
I have a question. So the word juju is specifically evil spirit?
Specifically, yeah. From this particular tribe, the word juju has a negative connotation.
That's so weird. I got chills because for some weird reason, I'm sorry, this is off topic, but for some weird reason, my partner's, cousin's son, out of nowhere started calling him Juju. And they know nothing about, they're Jehovah's Witnesses, but I do know that he's had trouble with a shadow figure following him. So I thought that was very interesting that this kid out of nowhere started calling him Juju.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically Juju. When we're like, no, that's Brian. Yeah, Juju. So I don't know. I thought that was very interesting.
That is interesting. I would be. And the kid has no. He hasn't heard of any of this, or
he was raised in a Jehovah's Witness family.
Yeah, I would definitely look at that.
Yeah. And I know, like, ever since, like, we first met, I felt something with him, and we've seen stuff.
Yeah.
We identified it just as a shadow person, a shadow man, a shadow being.
Yeah, because they appear as shadows based upon our level of perception.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I was raised with a Jehovah's Witness family, too, and I had dealings with the shadow people, too.
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd. And not only me, but there was another girl that I knew was also a member. And she used to have the same problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was a problem, but, it was the same kind of entity, I guess you can say. So, it's kind of odd that you bring that up. Maybe it has something to do with being a Jehovah's Witness. I don't know. I don't know. You know, it's just it's what a
It's interesting
coincidence.
though,
Yeah.
What a
Very-
coincidence.
Very-
Anyway, that's all I wanted to bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, especially when we're talking about like lineage, you know, descendants, blood ancestors, and so on. You know, what were their ancestors involved in? You know, most of this, you know, Catholicism, Christianity, so on and so forth, these were religions put upon most of these people. You know, so what practices were their ancestors really engaged in? That's then coming back through them, allowing them to see the things that they're seeing. You see? You know, what qualities from our ancestors are being reborn through us or our descendants that are then manifesting in these various ways, such as psychic powers, the ability to see things that others do not, and so on and so forth. You see? And what most of these cats have in common is that they've been reborn under some religion that was placed upon their ancestors through force. You know, this has to be considered. You know, we have to look at that. Yeah. This is why it's so important to engage in and find out more about our ancestors. We'll be getting to that, right? We'll be getting to that. But just to throw that out there for consideration. So, yes, etymology. Juju, from the Hausa tribe in North Nigeria, meaning a fetish or evil spirit. Also looking at the word voodoo, which in the Ewe tribe means a deity or a demon. And in the Fon tribe, F-O-N, means a good or bad spirit, an intermediary between God and man, or a deity. So that's looking at it phonetically, you know, hoodoo, voodoo. And these are all tribes from Western Africa, and we know that predominantly most of the slaves that were brought here were from the western end of the continent. Now, the second main option, if you will, for the origins of the word voodoo comes from the Akan, A-K-A-N. They're out of Ghana, Ivory Coast region. And for them, it's the word Odu or Undu. Odu spelled O-D-U and Undu, N-D-U. And so for them, Undu is reflective of hoodoo itself, Undu. So hoodoo, the practice of hoodoo, coming from Undu, phonetically and etymology speaking. And also in terms of what it means. So Undu means medicines. So then that can then further inform us about the original intentions in hoodoo itself. So when we look at hoodoo and connect it to Undu, medicines, what are we using in hoodoo? We're using all these herbs, plants, animal parts, human parts, curios, and so forth, you know, it's medicine for a situation, at least if you're using it in that particular context. We obviously know that they can be used for ill as well. So medicine, meaning of the word Undu, and looking at that as the etymology for the word hoodoo. Also for a root worker, it was Odeyefo, O-D-U-Y-E-F-O, which would mean a hoodoo person or a root worker.
Spell that one more time.
Yeah, sure. O-D-U-Y-E-F-O. So
That's like a practitioner of hoodoo that like townspeople would go to, like say the local witch or like a place like this.
the village people of the community, yeah, that would be the root worker. And so, you know, looking at the origins of hoodoo in the United States, typically, you know, where we see a lot of association of hoodoo with New Orleans and so forth. Now, New Orleans or Louisiana is one of the main roots of hoodoo in the United States, but it's not the main root. we can say that the hoodoo or the practice of hoodoo that came out of New Orleans, and which I'll be getting into later on, has had a massive impact on hoodoo as it's practiced today. You know, but it's not one of the main roots of hoodoo in the United States. So, to go back to the slaves themselves and the issue of conversion, you know, those who converted to Christianity, you know, secondly, those who refused to convert to Christianity, and then thirdly, those who appeared to convert to the religion of their slaveholders, meaning those who practiced the religion in public but privately or clandestinely engaged in the practices of their ancestors. You know, so you had these kind of three main, you know, types of individuals when it came to the immersion or being taken in by the religion of those that brought them here. You know, and then how that then later informs the practice of hoodoo itself, you know, in North America. So there were certain practices that were familiar to those who were brought over here. And some of them coming out of the Bible, and specifically the Old Testament, would have resonated with these Africans that were brought here. You know, so one of them being like animal sacrifice that we hear about in the Old Testament. You know, so the issue of sacrifice, that's something that would have resonated with these folks. Water immersion was another one. You know, baptism, being put under water or applying water or pouring water over someone, that's another element that would have resonated with the black Africans brought over here. And as far as the Congolese, we have the Congolese cosmogram, which is similar to a cross. So them seeing the cross would have been a visual kind of connection for them between that and the cosmogram, which the cosmogram itself being 4 points and then a fifth point in the middle, and it traces human life, existence, evolution, and so forth over this course, this cycle that there is. You know, the sun rising, it being at its peak, setting, and then the underworld. And these different suns have their own significance as well. But my point being is that the cross itself would have been a connecting point for some of these individuals. And then so hence for them, that would have given some of them some sign as to how they could work this new system, especially seeing literally a sign like that. So those are some things that would have been devices for helping these individuals work in this new system and having something to recognize, something that may have even acted as a point of conversion for some of them, especially if it was before the slave trade began. But it definitely would have been a connecting point for them. And also one of the things I wanted to mention was the miracle battles, you know, such as with Moses against Pharaoh's magicians. You know, that battle with the staff and then turning into serpents and so forth, that definitely, I could definitely see that being a point of connection for these individuals, especially practitioners of their native and mystic traditions that would have had clear mystical implications. Yeah, that would have been, I can see that act as a very strong story. Especially the stick itself and the Egun stick, which is the stick of the ancestors. So then Moses' staff becomes a symbolic representation, not just of the power he wields, literally, but also if it's related to the Egun stick, the ancestor stick, Moses' staff then becomes this totem or power symbol of the energy and the wisdom and the strength and support he yields from the prophets before him. You see? That's another way of interpreting Moses' staff when we look at it through the lens of Hoodoo and the ATR's African traditional religions. So Hoodoo forms in the colonies from a mingling of these various tribes and communities that are brought over here. So it's not just from one particular strain that we have the birth of Hoodoo, but rather it's from this mingling of all these various tribes and so forth, you know, that are brought together into one place. So that could be a mixing of philosophies and so on, but with still a number of underlying components. And we also have to keep in mind that Hoodoo itself is formation. You know, what leads to it? It wasn't something that just happened because. You know, Hoodoo was a form of support. It was a form of guidance, right? Hoodoo was a way for individuals to defend themselves, right? Hoodoo in and of itself essentially was a form of self-defense against the environment, the conditions in which they had to live, and so on and so forth. Besides just acting as a ground where people could feel like they could get somewhere, you know, and really provide them with the tools necessary to evolve and build and to continue to move forward, you know, and to see some type of progress happen in their life despite their most horrid living conditions, which wasn't really living at all. It was just existing conditions. It wasn't living conditions, they were existing conditions. So Hoodoo was there to support them on a physical level, especially when we're talking about medicine, you know, this knowledge of herbs, plants, and so forth. You know, this is one way in which Hoodoo as a system supported these individuals through medicine, through healing them, and so on, actual physical maladies. And then also on an emotional, psychological level, you know, how some of these roots and curios could be used to help an individual just not collapse, or maybe not destroy themselves under the conditions in which they were living. And so hence we could use these roots and plants and so forth, both for how they could affect someone emotionally, and then also what roots and curios and so forth you would apply to help someone on an emotional level as well. You know, so then it could be two-tiered. One, the physical aspect, anxiety, this and that and so forth, terror, night terrors, and then also the metaphysical, the spiritual